Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Our topic is charting the course of leadership in action. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our panelists. On my immediate left is Bjørn, well known to most of us, CEO of Anglo-Eastern Univan Group, one of the world's foremost ship management companies. Anglo-Eastern has over 750 vessels under full technical management, over 500 under crew management, and more than 1,000 supervised new buildings and conversions to its credit. Turning to Mr. Thomas Kazakos, who sits next to Bjørn. Thomas is Secretary General, International Chamber of Commerce. Previously, he served as Director General of the Cyprus Shipping Chamber and the representative National Member Association of Cyprus at ICS. Throughout his last tenure, he actively participated, together with successive CSC board members, at the ICS board, contributing to shaping the association's strategy on all relevant operational, regulatory, and legal issues concerning the international shipping industry. Sitting beside him is Dr. Gaby Bornheim, who is president of the German Shipowners Association, BDR, and managing director of Döhle Schiffahrts-KG, a lawyer with a doctorate in law. Gaby is the first lady to hold the position of president of BDR in the association's 114-year history. As managing director, she has been jointly responsible for successfully managing Peter Döhle's, one of the largest German shipping companies. She's been doing that for many years. The company has roughly 5,000 employees at work at sea and on land, a fleet of approximately 500 vessels, including 400 container ships, as well as bulk carriers and multi-purpose vessels under its commercial management. And 120 of these are also under its technical management. And lastly, but not least, is Mr. Sotiris Raptis, Secretary General of the European Community Shipowners Association, a position he has held since 2022. Previously, he was Director for the Environment at the Association and Senior Advisor in European Seaports Organization. Sotiris was responsible for the Clean Shipping campaign of the NGO Transport and Environment and worked as MEP Policy Advisor on Environment, Transport and Legal Affairs at the European Parliament. We will start straight away with some questions under the broad heading of security. The first question I'd like to address to Dr. Gaby Bornheim. Gaby, as we have heard just a few minutes ago from Nicholas and Evangelos, in recent years there has been a sharp rise in attacks on maritime infrastructure, such as pipelines and undersea cables, alongside GPS jamming and spoofing incidents in the Baltic Sea. These developments pose growing risks to navigation, safety, and supply security at sea. What practical steps can ship owners and authorities take to mitigate these threats without disrupting trade flows?
Jim, maritime security today faces totally new kinds of threats, invisible, unpredictable, and potentially devastating. What does that mean? We all are aware of the attacks we can see to the attacks and sabotage against the maritime infrastructure. We see to power cables, to the undersea cables, and this makes it really threatful, because we don't have a real secure environment any longer there. So it's totally new for us. And on a second stage, alongside these infrastructure threats, we have, as you mentioned, GPS spoofing and jamming. So for all of you who are not aware with that, the GPS spoofing means that there are that you don't know where you are. You believe that your ship is in a different space, and for the jamming, it is also that you kind of become invisible because the it is attacks, and so these disruptions, others you can't state them, make ships invisible, and so you have really the fear of collisions and groundings, which is severe. And to the reports of our members in Germany, such disturbances are especially seen in the Baltic Sea. And the Baltic Sea is one of the busiest maritime areas, and with roughly 60,000 ship movements per year. So imagine that the incidents intend from the Baltic to Poland and also to German and Swedish waters. So it is that then you have these kind of invisible ships, and your own ship might be relatively safe, and the own systems of your own ship might be the ones who are well organized, but there may be the other ones who are manipulated. And so there is the risk of collision, of grounding, and of dangerous indulgence. So your question, Jim, was, what can we do? What ship owners and also authorities can do to prevent these kinds of threats? So there are specifically, I would say, 6 measures that has to be kept in mind and which are also already applied. So treat maritime infrastructure as a priority security event. So we enhance the vigilance, that is very important. That we strengthen the information systems and the situational awareness. If you are not aware of what is happening, you can't protect yourself and the environment. What is also key, and we heard this already on other occasions, but I think in this perspective it's also very necessary to invest heavily in crew trainings and exercises, because the crew must know what they deal with. Also, you have alternative navigation methods come back in history. If your digital systems do not work any longer, then you have to become aware of how to use a compass, how to have a gyro, then also to see to the sky and to see what is visually there. So rely not only on what is digital. And you have to harden your systems. Cybersecurity is king, and the measures have to be understood. Last but not least, you've also coordinate regionally, because it's always in a very narrow space. And so you have to communicate with the authorities to know what is regionally going on. So what is meant is that this threat is come to stay, unfortunately, and that we have to all become aware of that, and that we also have to coordinate with the authorities to prevent the worst.
Can I just ask you one follow-up question? Are there any coordination measures that could be taken by owners and also with the German Navy, for example, and who have set up a specific task force for this, and also NATO members on the military side?
Okay, I would say these geopolitical tensions, which we have almost everywhere, they affect maritime trade. I think this, for all of us being parties to this industry, is absolutely clear. And all vessels worldwide are affected. So what we need is international maritime standards to be kept. Otherwise, we won't deal with that. And it's that these standards can only protect the ships, the cargo, and the crews. And that is absolutely important. And We have Nicholas and Mr. Marinakis have spoken about the shadow fleet. This is also a matter of concern. And you've also spoken how to prevent it. That was a very interesting idea, how to prevent that, to grow it even. But if we see it, they have scarcely any insurance. They are old vessels and it's an illegal trade. But how to prevent it in another way is that we, as German ship owners, we supported the sanctions which were imposed on Russia's war against the Ukraine. But to keep this and to adhere to these sanctions is one part. But security is at sea cannot only rely on private vigilance. That's not our primary task. We have then to coordinate, and that's what you mentioned. We have to coordinate with the Navy and the private sector. They have to inform each other. We have at the EU the maritime security strategy. In Germany, we as German Ship Owners Association are very dedicated to the German Maritime Security Strategy and the National Security Council to have this kind of awareness, because it's about awareness. We have to be aware what's going on. And also what we must do is to remember that the merchant shipping is also contributing to the Navy, and once they come into strategic points, we will be the ones when troops, military equipment, and other supplies have to be transported. We will support them because they are not the only ones who can do all this, the Navy vessels. We have, with our merchant vessels, we have to support them. And that is why close and well-regulated coordination is also important. The commercial sector is not to be denied in this respect. He has a role, and many sea routes are increasingly seen as geopolitical pressure points. They are used, our sea lanes. And commercial shipping must avoid to become a pawn to geopolitical conflicts. What we have to do is to, foster our stability, which we have as an industry, and also to be vital for the global economy and for the Navy parts, for the security. And this means we have to have a constant, a regular dialogue with the security parts.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bornheim. A question now for Sotiris on the same subject. How have European ship owners been impacted by the geopolitical instability and security threats arising around the world?
Thank you, Jim. We've got, over the last 3 years, a lot of crises unfolding all over the world, which have an obvious impact on international shipping and on European ship owners as well. The Black Sea crisis after the war in Ukraine, the crisis in the Red Sea, hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea, the emergence of the shadow fleet. What we have seen all these years is what we call a very adaptable sector and very resilient sector. Although we were in an event yesterday, someone called resilience a feature of failure, which is, it's good food for thought. But I think that it's also a feature of success, because if you don't insist, if you don't be resilient, you're gonna lose out in competition. We have seen also a huge disruption in the supply chains, especially after the Red Sea crisis. We saw even factories manufacturing cars in Europe shutting down the production line. But everything goes back to normal, almost back to normal, quite soon. On the maritime security element, We work closely as European ship owners with the diplomatic arm of the European Union, the External Action Service. We work together closely in the establishment of the operation of Aspides, and we promote the flow and the exchange of information. But when it comes to the geopolitical challenges, I would like to add one point here. It was mentioned previously by Mr. Marinakis. It's also the energy transition. And it's something that, as Europeans in Hong Kong, we all experience that the investment in the uptake of clean tech and clean fuels is becoming an aspect of economic competitiveness, and that also a geopolitical point. And we have seen a tremendous increase in investment in clean tech in China, although there is a lot of political pushback all around the world. Investment in renewables last year doubled the investment in fossil fuels. And it's something that makes our continent a bit more concerned about where we're heading. As we call the situation in Europe, that we are living through a slow agony. We need to figure out how to catch up in economic competition. Shipping is, I would say, immune to this challenge, because shipping is international. And European ship owners, we represent around 30% of the global fleet, and this brings a geopolitical added value to the EU, to Europe. I would close by saying that what has made shipping so competitive and so resilient is that we've got an international level playing field. We've got international regulations that ensure that we all have the same rules. And this is probably at stake at that moment. We discussed before about the shadow fleet, which is an obvious fragmentation from deviation from international law rules. But we've got also the postponement of the discussions at IMO level. And this risks undermining the role of the IMO. The challenge for us in the coming year is to ensure that the process is still alive, and we will finally conclude an internationally applied measure also for our energy transition.
Thank you very much, Sotiris. Thomas, as we're running a bit short of time, I'll skip the question for you and I'll move straight on to our next topic, which is green shipping and also technology. It's a question for Bjørn. In your fascinating new book, Balance Beyond Binary, you urge the case for a step change in how we produce and distribute energy. I know you are interested in energy policy, and I wonder if you could summarize, I think this is probably asking you too much to do, but summarize the case for nuclear in the maritime sector. Perhaps you could also say whether nuclear is a feasible project, a feasible objective, given the likely cost involved.
Thanks, Jim. Can you all hear me? If some of you don't recognize me today, it's because I'm wearing a tie. But I promise you, I'm still me. So, let me start by saying that when I talk about nuclear and shipping, I'm not referring to the pressurized water reactors we all know ashore for the last 60 years. I'm talking about fourth generation reactors, systems that run on ambient pressure, with passive safety and with an emergency zone that can be contained entirely within the ship structure. Because that changes everything. It means classification societies can regulate them, IMO can set guardrails, and insurers can underwrite them. And all three are now moving in the right direction. If we take a step back, then three things are converging. First, the technology is maturing, not in theory, but in actual engineering programs. Secondly, regulation is catching up with class societies and the IMO, preparing the frameworks needed for nuclear propulsion. And third, capital is flowing into the space. There are more than 50 companies working on fourth generation reactors today, and the maritime sector is no longer an afterthought in that ecosystem. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big supporter of green methanol and green ammonia, and they will matter for the next 2 or 3 decades, perhaps longer. At Anglo-Eastern, we are preparing crews for that transition, but I sincerely believe that in the long run, they are bridging fuels. They are made through extremely inefficient processes that lose large amounts of wind and solar energy through extremely inefficient processes such as electrolysis and synthesis. And then we have to transport them, store them, and burn them in engines that deliver far less energy per unit than we are used to. So they're definitely workable, but they are a compromise. Now, nuclear is the opposite of a compromise. Its energy density is staggering. It's roughly 100 million times higher than even the best fossil fuels. It's from a resource extraction standpoint and from an environmental footprint standpoint, nothing else comes close. A fourth-generation reactor on board a ship is essentially a thermal battery. It produces heat for many years, even decades, with minimal or no refueling. And we already know how to turn that heat into propulsion through turbines and electrification. In practice, that would mean no bunkering, no carrying fuel, more cargo space, higher installed power, higher speeds, true long-range capabilities, and a safety profile that's designed to be intrinsically safe rather than dependent on complex active systems. You've all heard about companies like Core Powers who've actually run the numbers, and their models show a strong economic case over the life of these deep-sea ships. So I think we will see ships propelled by nuclear in the next decade, and after that, adoption will be gradual but steady, and I know it's easy to prognosticate about 50 years in the future, but by 2075, I think all ships above 10,000 tons will be built to nuclear propulsion. But let me end by mentioning a bigger point here, and that is that energy really is prosperity. For most of human history, progress was really flat. 2,000 years ago, we were 250 million people on this planet. 200 years ago, we were 1 billion. Today, we are 8 billion, living longer, healthier, and more dignified lives than at any point in history. And that happened because of abundant energy. Fossil fuels lifted humanity, but taking carbon stored over millions of years and releasing it over a few centuries, it has consequences that we can't ignore. But we don't need less energy, we don't need less dense energy. We need more and more dense energy without the climate energy penalty. And if nuclear had been invented today, I think we'd all be scrambling to deploy it. Fourth generation nuclear is our chance to get that right, not just for the maritime sector, but for global prosperity in the century ahead.
Thank you very much, Bjørn. Thomas, a question for you, again on green shipping, if I may. As we're well aware, this time last month, most of the largest maritime nations expected to adopt, during an IMO conference in London, a set of regulations which had been agreed between them earlier in the year and which would have imposed a fee on carbon pollution to clean up shipping. Several nations, including the US, decided not to adopt the regulations, but rather to defer a decision for 1 year and adjourn. Nations may continue discussions, but what can they achieve if the US, Saudi Arabia, and other countries remain unwilling to adopt the regulations? Might the supporting nations adopt them anyway and press ahead?
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. And good afternoon to everybody. Allow me first to thank Kabila Ling for the invitation and Golos Bonosis. And since I've got the floor, I have the benefit of being part of our own event a day or two here. And some of the expert speakers that spoke about this very same issue is in the room, and I'm sure they will realize that I was listening when they were talking at our event. Allow me to go a bit back. The feeling I got from our event 2 days ago, which covered precisely the very same issue extensively, left me with two buzzwords. pragmatism, and commitment. And I think that's where I would like to start and end my answer to you. But if you want to analyze a bit more on what has happened on IMO and looking forward, yes, it depends how you look at it. But as far as the International Chamber of Shipping has made a very clear commitment for many, many years now. And as part of that commitment, the industry itself has submitted way before governments get their act together, our own proposal. And of course, unfortunately, this was rejected, but again, it was used as part of the discussions. Yes, the derailment, if you like, of the decision, and we've heard before from Mr. Marinakis, that gives the opportunity for governments to get their act together and have some clarity on the issues that a number of industry stakeholders have raised during these 15 years or so discussions. It's a good opportunity. Let me just remind everybody, which I'm sure we all come from the same industry. The industry has made a very clear commitment and is still there on the table. And in terms of what the industry needs in order to remain committed, both in terms of investment as well as implementing any outcome of the IMO going forward, is that we need a very clear clarity, commitment, and a simple, enforceable system, which again, will be able to apply from day one within the next steps down the line. Now, there is this issue of the gap between ambition and capacity that we've heard so many times during the days. But again, I don't want to be, let's say I'm a natural and paid optimist, and depends how large is my salary. I think I tend to be on the natural optimistic side. I think what we have experienced in London almost now a month ago is the fact that there is the need to take into account all the parameters that have come up. And this includes the governments that you mentioned before. And we do have the time frame now. Let's not stop arguing what has happened. Let's see where are we today, how much time we have in order to remain committed to the original code, because without that, the industry will not be able to deliver, to remain committed to it. And as far as we see it, we must always think, speak, and act globally. Without a global system, we're going to see the peripheral of, I'm sorry, Sotiris, and of course it's not the EU, but we're going to see systems like that, and we're already seeing the signs coming up. So let's be pragmatic, and this is a message to the governments, because I want to make it absolutely clear. Some members of our industry, they feel passionately about it more or less, but there's one clear message. The industry has already delivered a lot more than was expected to. Don't forget that it was the industry who came forward with ideas. It's the industry who has the knowledge. It's the industry who instigated governments to come forward. So let's stop shooting ourselves on the foot. Let's remain committed. This is what we want to go forward, but this has to be matched by a clear political commitment, taking into account the time that we have given to try, and without deviating from the commitment, which is I have to go towards decarbonization. We did the agreed frameworks of the IMO, but with the sense that now we need to bring everybody on board. Those who have said no, those who have said passionately no, those less no, but this is a time for commitment on behalf of the governments. And this includes all the governments, not just a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Well, thanks to my appalling time management, we've managed to exhaust our allotted time. No? Oh, we've got time for one more. Oh, 12, excellent, thank you. I'm coming on to the subject of labour shortages, which we've all read about, and this is a question for the whole panel. There are several reasons, I think, for labour shortages and probably no single way of improving the position. Could I ask each of you to say briefly what you think the most common or persistent reason is and how you would deal with it? I'll start with you, Bjørn.
Yeah. When I think about labour shortage, I think about the perceived labour shortages of seafarers. Now, it's a different life to go to sea. It's always going to be lonely, being away for months at a time, missing family, friends, a lot of things that people ashore take for granted. But there's also upsides to going to sea. One of them is a pay that in many cases make up for some of those losses. I'm not one of those who subscribe to a doomsday scenario about we won't be able to get seafarers in the future. I think for companies who lean in, explain what the industry offers, and takes care of crew on the way and build career, I think there is plenty of people in the world who want a seagoing career. In Anglo-Eastern, where we take about 500 cadets a year, we have more than 20,000 applicants for those 500 seats every year. But of course, that doesn't happen by chance. It's because we have teams deployed to go around to colleges and explain the opportunities for a seagoing career. And we then do a very rigorous testing and screening to choose the 500 best suited out of those 20,000. But I think any company who wants to can, by investing and leaning into the space, can actually attract seafarers of the future. But we need to build it. It doesn't come by itself.
Yep. Shall I? Yeah. Since we have time restriction, 2 pillars. One pillar is what we need to do to resolve existing issues that affect seafarers. And I'm talking from better connectivity, short leave, mental support, diversity and inclusion, all these things that we need to make our industry sexier, if I may use the word, in order to attract the youngsters who all the far more sexier industries that they don't have the problems that Bjørn just referred to, we have to compete with. That's the one ongoing, and this is where the tripartite system, governments, maritime employers, shipowners, and of course unions, they have to work with us in order to tackle this issue, be it on ILO, be it on other fora. And at the same time, industry together with governments, they have to invest in attracting education from young age, from school age to high school, in order to show the good side. As Bjørn said before, that it's not all that doom and gloom. If we look back the career of a seafarer 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was much more difficult than now. So it's a parallel, continuous commitment showing that shipping, it's a people's industry. And we need to address people first, and the hard life of our industry is on the seafaring side.
Bornheim, do you have it?
Okay, thank you, Jim. Yeah, if I may refer to you, Thomas, I think this industry is already very sexy. But let me explain that, because I think if you talk to the people in our industry, you will always have, they talk about their jobs. They are always have this light in their eyes. This brightness about the beauty of our industry. And it's not the doom and gloom. I agree with you. I think if you look at that, what it means to work in this industry and the whole variety of jobs you can have starting at sea, but then it's not the whole life at sea. You will find the opportunity either to work then after your time on board of a vessel, where you have the opportunity to start from scratch and to go even to become a master or a chief engineer. You have high quality and high technical values you have to deal with. You have international people with whom you deal. You have this kind of chances to work ashore. And this does mean you have also the ability to work in an industry which is more and more sustainable. So what more does a young person need than to work in this industry? It's fascinating already. And we have to make this more apparent. And it is not a sprint, it's a marathon, because we are also in competition with all other industries who have maybe better connectivity, as you stated, Thomas, but we are providing that to our seafarers already. So we have it. We hear what our seafarers need, what the young people need. And let me close on that. And if we all do not forget the 50% of mankind which is female and which could also contribute to being a seafarer, working in this industry, then I think we will have also a better future to see. And what we should also not forget, to embrace digitalization, because this will also make our life different from what it is now. So it's a development which you can have if we work in shipping.
And reduce the shortage.
I fully agree that we're already in a very attractive industry. And what I have noticed, it's a personal note, is that it's an industry with very deep community sense. I mean, if we think about the average time that an employee spends in Brussels, it's around 18 months. And it's quite of the opposite in our industry. Once you enter the industry, you can advance your career in the industry, which is quite unique. But I agree with Gaby that we need to do much better when it comes to diversity. And it's not only about diversity, it's also an economic element there, that we're losing talent in our industry if we don't exploit the talent of half of the population and other underrepresented groups. So we need to do much better there. From our side, we have taken a couple of initiatives to increase awareness as a first step. We launched 2 years ago a European honors for diversity with the cooperation of the Belgian presidency of the EU, and we're going to continue next year. But a last comment I've got on this issue is about the need to upskill and reskill. We're going through the energy and the digital transition, which will create an enormous challenge. I think it was a DNV study that found 2-3 years ago that we're going to need to upskill and reskill up to 800,000 seafarers by the mid-2030s to catch up with the digital and energy transition. And the Draghi report found that we're going to have 250,000 seafarers in Europe alone by the mid-2030s. It's an enormous challenge for us.
Thank you, Sotiris. Any questions from the audience on what we've been discussing? Well, I'll close here, and my thanks to the panelists. Oh, one question over there, sorry.
Well, I think I'm going to throw a wrench into this whole session because actually I cannot agree with some of the things discussed in this panel discussion. Because I think actually our shipping industry, as you know, shipping carries 90% of world trade, okay? And we contribute less than 3% of greenhouse gas emissions. Actually, it's only 2.7%. And just the beef industry contributes about 14% of greenhouse gas emissions. Land transportation contributes about 17% of gas emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions. So I think the shipping industry should be congratulated that we carry 90% of world trade and we only contribute 2.7% of greenhouse emissions. But I think the reason why people don't go after the beef industry or the land transportation industry is because a much larger number of people, eat beef, and a large number of people have, cars and land transportation equipment, whereas the number of ship owners is tiny as far as the population is concerned. So I think shipping is, we should be congratulated instead of being, demonized as far as emissions is concerned.
Thank you very much.
Well, I close this session now and thank the panelists for all their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.